genre.
Ooh, get it? Because it's a ghost episode? Welcome to Beyond Geek By Night, where we will be discussing each episode of the Geek By Night podcast leading up to the series finale. On today's episode, we will be discussing the 5th story arc, Ghost Story. So lock the door to the recording booth, rewatch Ghostbusters to make sure you understand all the references, and climb out of that fiery pit to the depths of hell, because we are about to go beyond Geek By Night. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. And here is our panel. I'm joined today by creator and executive producer Scott Carelli.
Hello.
Co-executive producer and writer Cassandra Fredrickson.
Hello.
Casting director and voice of Gretchen West, Chelsi Kern.
Hey.
Voice of Henry Swift, Nicholas Andrew Louie.
Hi.
And voice of Nathan Gershwin, Brian Brown.
Hello.
And our intrepid announcer as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wear lots of hats. Because Scott said way back when, he's like, you stayed with me from the very beginning, back when we had like the old show.
I'm excited to talk about that, especially because the classic episodes have just started coming out.
Yeah, I was just listening to them.
Man.
So
big, big yikes.
It's okay, Scott.
Let's recap Ghost Story a little bit. This comprises episodes 17 through 20. So, when we begin, Lorelai takes Mindy and Simon on a Halloween ghost tour of an abandoned amusement park, while Gwen and Gibson help Elliot move out of the apartment that he shared with Gretchen prior to her disappearance. Disgraced reporter Nathan Gershwin returns to his old broadcast station and begins to summon the dead all around McKinney City. Among them is Lorelai's deceased husband, Henry. Across the city, our heroes discuss the ideas of belief, proof, faith, and loss. When the underdogs realize that Nathan is creating the ghosts, among other things, by telling his story, they work together to jam the frequency and stop the broadcast. Elliot sees Gretchen in Swift Industries for just a moment before the switch is thrown and the illusions of dead invaders around McKinney City disappear. Nathan is approached by the mysterious woman before the gang can arrive and apprehend him. Elliot laments the death of Gretchen and decides not to move out of the apartment. Meanwhile, Lorelai returns to Swift Industries and accosts Gretchen for nearly botching their secret plan. Gretchen has a role to play, but until that time comes, she is a ghost. Love this episode so much. So, since we have a couple people that have not yet been on a Beyond Geek By Night episode, I have to ask the requisite question of how you got involved with the show Geek By Night. Brian, I would love to start with you because I know you've had a long and storied involvement with this show. So yeah, tell us how your Geek By Night story.
So it happened, we think 2006, Scott, right around there?
Yeah, I think that's when I started auditioning people.
Yeah, I think it was right around 2006. Scott was auditioning people, put out the call for people to be in an audio drama. I was already in an audio drama, Buffy Between the Lines, and had a pretty good role in that. So I was like, I'll try out, because Scott, you were involved with Buffy for a little while too, weren't you?
I asked to edit some scenes so that I could practice before starting Geek By Night.
Right.
And luckily they needed all the help they could get, so they sent me whatever
Lord.
I wanted.
Yeah, we needed a lot of help for that show. And it was Scott and John at the time, right? John, you and John, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ben, I believe, was involved as well.
No, he was not.
Was not yet? Okay.
No, he was never involved. Not really.
Oh, was he? Okay. He was just kind of, okay. He's just the name. Yeah, I remember now. Okay. It's been a long time. I'm trying to bring back these memories of where it happened. So I auditioned, and there was no role really for me that I fit well for. I tried like bit parts and whatnot. And Scott's like, you know what? You do your own podcast already. You have a very, nice narrator voice. Can you at least do the credits for us? And I'm like, sure, I'll do whatever you want. If you want me to do side voices, credits, whatever, that's fine. And so I ended up being the credit guy pretty much for that first bit. And then everything went kablooey. And then Scott decided he's going to pick it up again and kind of reimagine everything and said, hey, you know what? Brian was pretty good with my credits. I'll have him do it again. But I also would like to give him a role since I never kind of gave him a role before. I think I have, something he might be good at, or we'll find something for him. I don't know. We'll see. Mm-hmm. And, he just said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Sure." And so thus, here I am still. Mm-hmm. I really believe in a lot of what Scott does. And I've watched Scott grow over the years. Definitely grow so much beyond what it was originally. And so I'm really happy when he asked me to participate again. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I got your back. So, and that's kind of how I got here.
That was
very
nice,
cool.
Brian. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sure. No, it's true, Scott. I mean, I remember you when you started out, I listened to that first episode too, that you're, pushing out on the Patreon feed. And I'm just like, wow, it's rough. And I go back and listen to the other audio dramas I've been part of, and you listen to them and you're like, man, these are rough, not polished like, now. Mm-hmm. It's so weird to think back when, audio dramas were first taking off and how far they've come.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this episode especially, and I can't wait to get to some of that. Nicholas, why don't you tell us about your involvement with the show, how you got started and all that?
My memory is not as good as Brian's, so
then make it up.
Yeah, make up a great story.
Whatever you say.
I was a street urchin. Scott and Chelsi picked me up off the road.
We'll do voice acting for food.
I auditioned, and I can't remember if the audition was on a voice acting forum or not, or if I heard about it from somebody else. It's all a blur. It was so long ago.
I'm sure you've also done like a million of these since then. So,
right.
I mean, I've gotten into the mode of auditioning and forgetting, and so my origins for certain projects are I just assume it's the same process. But I used to frequent a lot of voice acting places back around that time, and so I assume I heard about it from there. And it was for Henry, and I think I auditioned for another dude that was in the episode.
I think so. I think you auditioned for Henry, and I think you auditioned for Fred.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I didn't get that guy. So I got. I mean, it was I didn't have much history with audio dramas and podcasts and stuff, and I was like, I want to do some, and so I saw that, and I was like, this could be really, really cool, and it's not like a big part, so I don't, it's not, everything's not resting on my shoulders, and then I get in the episode, I'm like, okay, well, it's still a pivotal part of it, and I was like, oh crap, and then yeah. I was
now you're stuck with us.
I will say the reason that you didn't get Fred, despite auditioning for it and probably being excellent, is because I gave Chelsi the rule of only casting one person as one thing in an episode, because unlike animation, we don't have like the character design to look at to throw people off. So when Rob Paulson does like 7 voices in an episode of an animated show, but they all look different, like you can use that to distract the audience that it's not the same person. But we don't have that, unfortunately. So only one character per episode.
I get it, and it's honestly a better choice.
You were a better Henry.
Yeah. And it was also different because I think Chelsi, we did a rehearsal, and then she's like, okay, great rehearsal. Remember all of that we did and recorded. Goodbye. And I was like, all right. Because at that point, I was used to just getting directed, like over Skype or whatever, and I record on my end, and we just do it live, and I was like, cool. And I'd send over my file and be all good. And so that was like really interesting. And I'm like, hope I don't screw that up, because there was some very interesting things that I had to remember to do. Especially
you did not screw it up.
Yeah. Especially when he like ghouls out and stuff. So I'm like, that was interesting.
So was that effects doing that to your voice, or did you just have like a really amazing school monster voice? what went into creating that effect? Because I love that part.
I'm going to say it was effects, but I did try my hardest.
Yeah, it was
a mix.
Yeah, it was Nick doing like a sort of like a baseline voice of like, okay, I'm going to go deeper now and talk like this. And then me taking that and then layering it and adding like echo and all kinds of stuff onto it to create that effect. This was me, like, Cassandra directed this episode and I was so happy that I wasn't directing it too, because like the sound design portion of it took forever. And I think this was our first delayed episode, and that's why, because it took forever to make and post.
It shows. There is a lot to this episode, though. I mean, I was definitely going to ask about that later, because there's just so much going on, especially at the amusement park when everything's going to hell. So.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. Let's hear it from Chelsi.
Yeah, Chelsi, how'd you get involved with the show?
Okay. My turn at last. So I started on Geek by Night. So my first experience with Geek by Night was listening to the original version before it was snatched away from me. And it was taken down and I didn't get to finish it. But now I get to, so I'm excited to. But at the time I was working with Scott on a couple of short films. We had just wrapped one and we were in talks for our next one. And I remember it was Halloween, and I showed up at Scott's house for our Halloween party, and he was really excited, and he was like, I've got 2 amazing things for you. I want you to be on Geek by Night, and I'm going to do this film, and I want you to be the lead. And I was like, this is the best night ever. And so he brought me on as Gretchen, and by the time, right after episode 1, I believe, he asked me to step on as the casting director as well. And it's
you wanted to be more involved, and I was like, I was like, I don't know. Like, honestly, to be totally honest, I just didn't really, I was so like focused on creating the show again and getting all of those ducks in a row that I was like, I've already trained like Cass and Nick on how to direct and stuff. I can't do it with you two. But then I thought like, oh, what's the other thing that's taking up all of my time? And I was like, well, if you want to take over the casting thing, that would be extremely helpful. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's my favorite job I've ever done in my life. And it's so much fun. It's an absolute blast. Every episode has been so fun. I've met so many voice actors. I've cast probably at this point almost 100 roles, and it has been quite a journey. But it's so fun because then I get to meet so many new people and make new friends like Nick and like everybody else, and it's really cool, especially when I have some actors who are reoccurring and not in the same character, but we've got some actors who have played up to 10 characters in the season, and it's wild.
Walk us through the process of casting. Like, what does a day in the life of a casting director look like, going from like script to episode launch?
It's far more than a day. So many more days. So it starts with me getting the script, and I read through the script, and as I'm reading through it, I pull up a Google Doc for a production note, and I list out every guest character and every supporting character in the episode, and then I take to the streets. Depending on what kind of roles I have to fill, I either am posting on different voice acting websites and Facebook groups, or I'm just reaching out to voice actors that I already know. Because some episodes there are only 4 supporting characters that I have to fill, in those cases, I usually just turn to people that I've already worked with before. But especially when I have like bigger guest characters to fill, like Henry, then I put out audition notices. And I still reach out to other voice actors I know, but it's a mixed process then. And then I start getting auditions in, and some of them, a lot of times somebody will send in an audition and I'll be like, this is really great. You sound awesome. Can you actually read for a different character? That's a super common thing to happen. I would say a lot of the characters I've cast were not the characters that people originally auditioned for. But they auditioned for something else, and I was like, "Oh, you'd be perfect for this." I
think the thing that I'm most impressed with Chelsi is I didn't really like give her any direction. I just sort of like was relieved to have this thing off my plate, and somehow based off of just that first reboot episode, she had this like weird like connection with my brain where she knew exactly what I was looking for with every character every single time. And it's I don't know. Like every time, like I'll go in to like direct an episode, or I'll get a completed directed episode and start laying down the audio design on it, and I'll hear these characters for the first time, and it's just like, yeah, that's Geek by Night. She knows what Geek by Night sounds like. It's the most incredible thing, because I can't even describe what that is. I don't know, which is the reason why I'm never going to sell this show to television, because I can't pitch it. I don't know what the show is. It's crazy, but Chelsi understands it like perfectly, and she just nails it every time, and it blows me away.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very it's always very validating when I'm casting like a guest character. Because supporting actors, I don't really run through Scott, but the bigger guest characters who are either going to show up multiple times or they play a bigger role in the episode, I usually run them by Scott before I officially cast them. And it's always so validating when I send him someone and he's like, this is perfect. Oh my gosh, I love this. Like, I'm just like, yes, I nailed it. But yeah, so then I finalize the casting and I send them to Dropbox and they get directed, and the rest is all on Scott.
In the average episode, how many different actors do you have?
Oh,
It's kind of for Scott, Cass, and Chelsi.
Depends. I mean, it really depends on the episodes, because like some episodes are more, you know, whatever the Geek by Night equivalent of a bottle episode is, which is basically like our core group of people, and it'll mostly be them. And then there's other episodes like we just wrote a script that's gonna go up probably next week for the cast and everybody to read. Our third episode of season 2, and it has so many characters.
Great.
It has so many characters. Chelsi's gonna be the casting director. Chelsi's gonna be very mad, but Geek by Night fan Chelsi will love the script so much that I don't think she's gonna have an issue with it. Yeah. So it all depends. It just depends on what the story requires, and whether or not how clever and funny we think we are with our with our supporting cast characters. But it varies a lot, honestly.
It really does. There was, I think it was, I don't know, maybe Simon's episode where we only had like maybe four or five extra characters, but then
you were done in like 2 days on that one.
Yeah, that one was easy, but then
glad it was easy for episode, one of us.
Right? But like Gwen's episode, I think the Janet Stokely episode, that one probably had like 20 guest and supporting characters. There were so many characters in that episode, and same with the sorority one. We had so many bros and bartenders and just all sorts of different characters.
Mm-hmm.
but it's fun because a lot of the actors that we have can play like various voices, and like Nick, I'd love to hear about that with you because I know you've played a couple different characters on the show, and most people probably wouldn't know. I can't tell the difference between your Henry voice or like I can. There's a massive difference between your Henry voice and the other voices of characters that you've played. And
I'm always
so
surprised
cool.
when I see Nick's name in the credits when I'm finalizing the credits to send them to Brian. I'm always surprised to see his name. I was like, wait, who did he play?
What's he doing here?
Well, that's
Him
the whole point.
again?
I don't know what to tell you.
It's just magic.
Acting.
It's like
Nick,
if
Nick doesn't remember all the characters he's played.
I'm grateful to have played a handful of extras for, I think I was in the holiday special thing. I was scattered around through a couple of things, and it's easy to do a different voice for like 5 seconds and then bounce. But
Yes.
if you put them all together, guarantee you'll be like, nah, all right. I see what you're up to. And I'm like, what do you want? But if you spread them out between episodes, it's fine. I'm not going to pretend I'm, Rob Paulson or like, anybody over here. I have like 3 voices, but you spread them out evenly enough. Hey, you don't notice.
It's
It
magic.
always works though. It's great because like Nick is one of there's like a handful of actors that I have that I know I can email them and be like, hey, I need like 2 lines of this customer number 4. Like, can you just give me some random voice and make it work? And he's like, yes, absolutely, and sends me something perfect.
Yeah,
Another question
honestly,
for-
the thing about the whole like voice casting thing is that, and this is an aspect that I just want to mention because I just think it's really funny. But the fact is, like, I remember when I was doing the casting stuff on the first episode before handing the reins off to Chelsi, I was kind of shocked and just like exhausted at the amount of voice actors who they have anime voice and that's it. That's just different variations of anime voice.
You're
and
welcome.
Chelsi has been very good at weeding all of those out because I remember in the second episode she would give anime voice dudes some like direction, a little direction, like maybe like do it like this, and they'd be like, oh, okay, sure, and then they just do another anime voice, and she's like, okay, and then like they got sent down the river, and she moved on to some other people. I remember her talking about that frustration in that first episode, and I was like, yeah, that's why I gave you the job because I was having that same problem.
Yes, there have been many auditions that I've gotten that I'm like, this is great. Can I just hear like your regular voice? Like, what's that sound like?
Yeah,
and some people just don't.
They don't know
get
what
it.
their regular voice sounds
That is
like
their
anymore.
voice. They're anime.
Yeah.
So do you ever have characters emerge from a specific voice actor's talents? The example that I'm thinking of is the ghosts in the middle of the episode who Elliot kind of sneaks past, and they have that little exchange, and it's this very character-y voice. So do you usually start with a clear idea, or is it like, oh, this person can do this, let's play around with it?
That was a weird, stupid joke that only made me laugh, and I kept it all the way through because I was adamant. I was like, no, this is funny, and I remember Nick and Cash just both being like, okay, like whatever. I was like, no, I know what this is gonna be like, and it's gonna be really funny. And you know what? I was right. It was funny. But we did for that, because it was so specific, I had such a specific idea. Cass asked somebody local to do that particular voice so that I
You mean
could.
Chelsi?
Yeah, I was like,
sorry,
wait.
Chelsi. Yeah, sorry.
Just some local.
I was staring at Cass's name as I was talking about Chelsi. Chelsi got Cass somebody local for that and brought them into my apartment so that I could like very specifically direct them because I knew exactly how stupid I wanted it to be. And I needed to have someone who trusted me to sound really stupid on the recording so that I could make it sound even stupider in post and make the joke work the way that I wanted it to. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. I love it.
It's so dumb, but it's so good.
It's great. Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of this episode. So talking about ghost voices, I want to get into the audio or the sound production and design of this episode because, this is episode 17 through 20, and I feel like the episodes get a little more complex every time. Mm-hmm. And this one particularly with the two different groups, sort of parallel stories, they feel very different. There's a lot going on in both places, and like I mentioned earlier, there's the part at the amusement park where everything's kind of going crazy and you have characters talking over music, talking over all these sound effects. What is the process of building these scenes where so much is happening?
Well, Cassandra directed this episode, so I get the scenes back from her of her basically like choosing the actor takes and putting them together so that the conversation sounds natural. And I think she did like an incredible job. So right off the bat, like I had a really stellar baseline to work off of, which is important for timing and everything else. I think the only thing that we had to tweak, and I ended up giving her the note, and then like as we got later scenes back, they were more in line with what we were picturing. But I think the first scene that she sent back of the news stuff wasn't fast enough because it was supposed to be like aping Aaron Sorkin, like kind of like West Wing kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that was like the vibe we were going for. And so I think when she first sent it, she directed it like everything else in the episode. And then I was kind of picturing it more like this. And then she was like, oh, and then the next time she sent me a scene, I was like, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's it. So cause she knows. But yeah, it was really, really well directed, for starters. And then with everything else, the thing that I do is like when it's being directed, I am going and I am trying to track down the right sound effects for things. I will rip stuff off of YouTube videos, like people walking through. I think I literally took audio from somebody like walking through an abandoned amusement park, like those weird videos that people make. Mm-hmm. And I think I ripped audio off of that and then like used that as like a base layer and then combined things with like rides turning on and stuff like that. And I honestly, I don't know where I find a lot of it. Some of it I record myself. If I can't find the right thing and other things that I'm able to find here or there. But in general, I can hear it in my head, what I want it to sound like. And I just keep tweaking it until it sounds like I want it to sound. And I don't know how else to explain it other than that. It's really hard and it takes forever. But when you go into a scene, it's really cool feeling to start a scene and have nothing but the dialogue in it. And then, work on it for a few hours and then it's done. And then I listen back to it and it's like, oh, wow. Like there's the sound, there's the sound effects. There's like everything. It's really, really like immensely satisfying. And it's the thing that keeps me going when I am like, just like, why am I doing this to myself? And then I get to the end of an episode, end of a scene, and I'm like, okay, that was great. Let's start another one, and then I start the process over again. But yeah, it takes forever. It really does. I mean, this episode in particular took a really long time. The next episode was easier, and then episode 7 was pretty difficult as well because I had to invent sounds that no one has ever heard before. We'll get there in a couple of episodes, but it's I mean, it's just patience and listening back and knowing it doesn't sound right and trying to pinpoint what it's lacking. And then trying to go find the sound that I think it's lacking, and trying it out. And sometimes it doesn't work, and I take that out and I find something else. And I don't know. It's trial and error mostly. And it takes forever, but it's great when it works.
It does work. Cass, I want to ask you about directing, because there are a lot of pretty heavy emotional scenes in this episode. I mean, you have Lorelai seeing her dead husband and speaking to him and then realizing that he's just a projection, a photograph. And then you have all these characters talking about their philosophies on the afterlife and things like that. What is your directing style? Do you like to have the actors sort of find those emotions on their own, or do you have a clear image in your head and try to steer them towards it?
Because I was like kind of removed from the like table reading process. Like I think I was, at the time, I think I was like out of town, when the table read was happening. I can't remember. It was like 4 years ago. But like Scott was saying with the audio design, and especially when I'm involved in writing the script, like when I'm writing a line, I know how it sounds in my head, or like how I'm intending it to sound. So getting back the lines from our actors, sometimes like, they nail it and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want. So I like pinpoint that and, put it in the track. But sometimes, I get really frustrated because there isn't like the perfect take, like, so to speak, that like lines up with what I was envisioning. So when that happens, I have to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, so it isn't how I wanted it to be, but like now I have to sort through like the best take of what they provided. So in that, it's a little frustrating, and it's kind of a lengthy process depending on the scene, and especially how many characters are involved in the scene. Because if there's like 10 different vocal tracks, I have to like scroll down forever and figure out where it goes. But yeah, so it's like, I know how it sounds in my head or how I want it to sound. And then I kind of figure out the best way to go about doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do actors tend to play with the lines ever, or is everything that we hear pretty much on script?
I actually like it when they improvise a little bit, especially with like Naomi comes to mind.
Chris does it a lot too.
Yes,
Chris,
yeah. The way that she says "hooray," like I literally say that all the time now. So and I think that was just like a silly. I really like all the blooper-esque line readings. Like getting Morgan's lines back was really funny because she was recording with Scott in person. So like listening to Scott like try to direct her was really amusing. But yeah, no, I like it when there's like vastly different takes because then it gives me more to play with.
Awesome. Brian, I'm going to move to you next.
All right.
I'm really interested in talking to people about their creative process. So you are the announcer, and we hear your voice every single episode. And then obviously in this story arc, you are Nathan Gershwin, who has this very, broadcasting, menacing voice. Walk me through what your physical process looks like for recording these. Like, do you practice voices? Do you have some specific person in mind? Do you just kind of wing it?
So for this specifically, it's whatever the director said, and I think it was Scott at the time, or Scott or Nick Jimenez, and they said, we want to think War of the Worlds. You are Orson Welles. Yes. That is kind of that rolling orientation, when you're talking out to the world and you're broadcasting. And so I was, okay, I can do that. And the rest of it is just basically slight manipulation of how my regular voice is. So it's not like I was, putting on a character accent or anything like that. and just from a voice actor standpoint, sitting down, finding a quiet space. And since I live in Arizona, it's hot. When we record, a lot of times you turn off all the fans, you turn off the AC, so there's no background noise, and it's like you're melting, you're sweating, you're cranky usually. And as a voice actor, I try to do multiple takes, multiple different ways, like Cass was saying, because you want to give them something different. I don't know exactly how this word is going to be. And for a lot of the non-core characters, we don't necessarily do table reads. So for us, we kind of get the scripts, a little bit of direction, and go. And so you do the best you can, and you pray. You pray that it's going to be good enough, and they're not going to come back and say, yeah, those lines you did, not so good. Can you redo them for us? Which most of us as voice actors are like, sure, no problem. Not a problem at all. And then usually at that point, I'll ask, what did I do? How did I do? How did I screw it up? What do you want? And so you re-record it for them. And hopefully you do a better take. I also like to give a fair amount of takes too, which I guess can be annoying for somebody who's having to sift through them all.
I feel that.
But I would rather give 1 billion, wouldn't you, Nick? I would rather give them so many more than they need. Kill them with kindness.
It's not kind, Brian.
I know it isn't kind.
I think I prefer it because in the audio program, I'm able to take even single words from a take and then line it up with something else so that it sounds closer to what I'm envisioning. But yeah, it is kind of a lot at the same time.
It is. Sometimes.
Yeah, we've definitely if I can create a take that I like instead of making the actor redo it, I will. And
I
I've
feel
done
like a
it
wizard.
many times.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're like, this is magic. I made them say something totally different.
Yeah.
And that's that is kind of the nice thing about having lots of takes to go from. But for stuff like the credits, I can do it in one take usually. I don't usually flub up too much. It's pretty much a pretty standard read.
As long as I give you a pronunciation key, you're good to go.
Yeah, some people's names, man, let me tell you.
Yeah, some of them are tough.
Yeah, you're like, how is this again? I don't remember, Scott. Yeah. And I'll hit him up on Facebook and say, Scott, what is this person's last name again? But for those are quick, easy. But for character wise, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a longer involved process. Usually I try to do it in a sitting, maybe 2, depending on how much. This one was a little bit longer because there's so many more lines for me to do. Mm-hmm. So it was a couple sessions for me. And I do the old voice trick where I make sure to have some sort of tea or something to coat my throat, cough drops, the whole 9 yards, especially for talking so much. But yeah, it's the biggest killer to me is the heat. Just doing it in the middle of summer in Arizona just dies. Yeah. It's brutal.
So Chelsi, I'm interested in the same thing for the supporting characters. So these characters that don't really have backstories and maybe aren't central to the plot. Do you have actors tend to play around and give you a lot of different takes, or do you have a pretty specific goal in mind of what role you want them to fill?
So it depends on the character and it depends on the actor. Some actors are very they're very confident in I've got these 2 different takes and one of these are great. And some of them are I'm going to give you 7 different voices of the same line and whatever sticks. And
I'm feeling called out.
That's the beauty of it, truly. Nick is one of those people that I'm I don't know, this is just a really random small part. What can you give me? And Nick is here's, a buffet of options. And I'm great, thank you. But yeah, there are some supporting characters that I feel I know exactly what I want. And I'll give a little bit of direction, but for the most part, I don't give a ton of direction for supporting characters just because I kind of trust the voice actors more than I trust myself sometimes. I have a lot of confidence in them, and I know if I say here's this character, here's like a 1-sentence description of who they are. They're sometimes they send me something back that I never had even considered, and I'm like, this is amazing, and you're cast. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's so I don't know. It depends on the character and it depends on the actor. Truly, we've got some actors who have played so many different characters, and we've got some who like were only in one character, but they were really, really great. So it varies.
So Nick, you mentioned that you've frequented like voice acting forums and things like that. How long have you been voice acting, and what was some of your voice acting expertise leading up to your involvement with Geek by Night?
Well, I've been getting paid aside. I've been on the internet voice acting since about 2004 or 5. And I was 12.
Wow.
So I didn't really get a lot. I was my voice dropped, and so I was too old for 12-year-olds and too young for everybody else. So I was like, but you keep with it. You do your fan dubs, your projects. You just have fun for several years because no one else takes it seriously. And when was this cast? It was like
2016.
2016.
It would have been early 2016.
Yeah. So by that time, I started like around 2011. I was like, okay, let's try and get paid now. Let's try and get paid for things. And so I just started like, and then, looking for more serious-esque stuff. Not your run-of-the-mill anime thing. And, after the 50th person going, stop sounding anime, you kind of veer away from anime. And so by that time I did, I think an indie game, a couple of things, nothing too crazy. I was a part of, Natalie Van Sisteen's audio drama, Elysium Project. That was probably
Natalie.
The only other. I didn't know you said Natalie. I didn't know if you.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I was like, it's the only other audio drama thing I think I besides like little bits, but the only like long form thing that I've ever done, and I was like, that's around the time where I was like, I want to do more, and so, yeah, I mean, expertise. I mean, really, it's like, that part threw me. I was like, I don't know, something's gonna fill that little question there. Yeah, that's what I got.
Did you had you listened to the episodes leading up to the introduction of Henry before you did this? Because Lorelai is a fan favorite character. She's central, and we really did not know this part of her, and you're part of this really big reveal. Did you have that character development going in, or did you just focus on the role itself?
Yeah. Scott may not like this answer, but no.
No one listens to this show. It's fine.
It's no offense, great project. One of my favorites. Like this episode especially was like probably one of the most well-produced things I've ever been in. So just take that with you. Did not know about this series beforehand. And so I went in just like, look at this guy. He's a ghost dude. All right. Like he's the husband. I gotcha. And then it wasn't until getting into the rehearsal thing, the read through with Chelsi, that she explained sort of who Lorelai is and how to say Lorelai and all that stuff. And, it was from there, I just kind of was like, okay, well, he hasn't been really talked about or shown up or anything until here. So I'm like, really, I am at the point with the audience, I guess. So I'm like, I'm just going to show up and pretend there's something, that's some underlying thing going on.
Yeah.
Also, it was, yeah, because the other half of the time I'm a ghoul, so there's that.
It's true.
Then there was Chelsi going, okay, this is a Ghostbuster reference, and I was like, oh, Ghostbusters, oh. let me go look up that clip real fast.
I can't imagine the full-time job it takes to look up every reference from Geek by Night. But
Yeah.
There's got to be a list, right?
Master list.
So obviously we can't talk about Ghost Story without also mentioning the reveal of Gretchen. This is going to be for Scott, Cass, and Chelsi, because I'm interested to know between the three of you. Between the first episode where we meet Gretchen and she disappears, this episode where we find out that there's some plot with Lorelai, and Friends and Enemies and A Matter of Time where we actually learn what that entails. How much did you know at each point? Like, when she disappears in episode 1, do you know, like, the reason for it and what she's doing the whole time?
I did. I don't know if I told Cass, but I knew.
If I remember correctly, we like broke the whole season before we even started production on it. So yeah, we knew.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
Did you know, Chelsi?
I don't know if Chelsi knew. No.
No. And I was always so mad about it because Scott kept me in the dark. I had no idea. So basically every episode was just like me scanning through the script to see if I was in it.
Control F, Gretchen.
Yes.
That's why she got involved as a casting director, is because I made her character disappear in the first episode, and she was like, "Am I going to have anything to do? Like, I like this show. I don't want to not do stuff for it." And then that's how she did the casting director thing. But yeah, no, I always knew what the deal was. Nick and I talked about it. The thing is the Gretchen storyline, which obviously I'll be able to go into more detail when we get to A Matter of Time. But the Gretchen storyline was something that is hinted at being a thing in the original Geek by Night series. Gretchen isn't in the series, but she is mentioned in a later episode, and it's like a big reveal that Gretchen is even a person that exists. And that was there to set up what I was wanting to do with Gretchen, and it was the same thing back then as it is now. Only now I got to I had Chelsi, and so I was like, well, if I'm gonna have Chelsi, I'm gonna use her and introduce the character prior to the reveal of what's going on with her. I'm trying to keep this vague in case people are listening to this and haven't listened to the episodes that come later. But yeah, like I that's something that I'll be able to really get into when we talk about A Matter of Time. But yeah, I definitely knew, and I was really excited about the reveal of what was happening, and I really liked the storyline for Elliot, and it is more about Elliot than it probably is about Gretchen, which is why I made the episode where we reveal it all about Gretchen, because I feel like I owed it to the character and to Chelsi at that point. But I, it's tricky doing something like this and not making it feel like you're just creating like a BS female character that's just there to give the male character pain. And so I wanted this to be like a kind of like a flip of that a little bit, where it's like it almost feels like it's that, and then in the end you're like, oh, actually not so much.
Yeah, you didn't want to fridge me. I remember you said that. Yeah, very specifically.
I wanted people to think you had been fridged, and then reveal that, like, the fridge was actually this.
All right. Does anybody have any closing thoughts on this wonderful set of episodes, Ghost Story?
I mean, cool. I would like to hear Cass talk about the story a bit, because I know that she was deeply involved in the story process as far as writing this. I think the three of us conceived it together, and then we were like, let's just all write it. I think we all like split up, right? And we wrote like different sections of it.
Well, honestly, like when you asked me to come on this panel a few days ago, Scott, I was a little trepidatious because I am half convinced this episode is cursed, even though it's like my favorite thing that I've worked on. Yes, very much so. And I'm incredibly proud of this, but also when we were breaking the story and first kind of like getting into the nitty-gritty of it, my father passed away unexpectedly. So that was like a big hurdle for me to work through, obviously. And then when we were actually like picking up production of it again, my grandfather passed away. So there was just a lot of, grief and loss. And so it felt like, I remember multiple times Nick and Scott being like, it's okay, you don't have to write any of this, like we got you. And I appreciated that, but like also it felt like something that I needed to do. So, and it actually was very helpful in me kind of sorting through some stuff, because I remember Nick wrote a lot of the newsroom stuff, because that's kind of his, like he's better at like snappy dialogue, or like that, that style of dialogue, I think. And Scott's
he was really good at aping the Sorkin thing.
Yes,
for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
And Scott did a lot of the plot heavy stuff. But I was like, I want the like emotional bits. So the scene with Simon and Mindy on the swings in episode, 18 of this? And then the monologue that Lorelai does about how she was trying to cope with Henry's death are two things that I remember writing like very specifically. And so that was like, I don't know, I'm like really, I'm really proud of how this turned out because it's so like personal to me. And directing it too, like directing it was, it was difficult for me to like, it was difficult, but like in a good way to hear that like the actors say like these words that I'd written while I was like trying to cope with life. And then like for the cherry of the, I don't know, Sunday, when this finally came out, the only time I listened to it, like I found out my cat had cancer. So I'm like,
Man.
yeah, I know. So, like Scott was like, hey, I want you to talk about this again. I was like, okay, but, I don't know. So if anything terrible happens, but I feel like 2020 is already like terrible. So maybe I'm good. But yeah, no, I think as a writer, I'm mostly interested in character, like really heavy emotional, like character interactions to begin with. So this, like going into it, before all of this happened, I was really excited to kind of like sink my teeth into it. But then after all of that, it took on like a new, meaning. And I was like, I hesitated to say that I was grateful for the experience, like my life experience, but it also like informed this episode and made it more real for me. So yeah, I don't know. I'm glad that, everyone likes it. And I'm glad that like listening to it again, like 4 years later, I'm still really impressed. And it was like so ambitious, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm like stunned that this is like so good.
I think this is the episode that I like like between Cass's writing of those emotional scenes like really made me feel like I needed to step up to the plate and like blow the sound design away, because I didn't want this episode. I wanted this episode to match how I felt about those scenes. Like I wanted the whole episode to be as good as I thought those scenes were.
Oh, wow.
I wanted the episode to deserve those scenes. And so I worked really hard on that. And then when the episode was done, and I think that it's the best one at this point, I think at that point it was like every episode had to be the best episode we had ever done. And that's why it took forever to come out, was because I refused to let it just be okay. Like I after Ghost Story, I was like, okay, we can't go back. Like, it's only forward now. And as a result, it's like, none of us are making any money on this at all. And so it was just like, I had to do it in my spare time while also like earning money to, live and things like that. And It just made everything take forever. But it was the fact that it all started with how good those cast scenes were.
Aww.
And knowing that I needed to have an episode that deserved those scenes and matched the quality level of those scenes. And then because the episode was so good, it just carried on through the rest of the season of like everything needing to be good. But I can really pinpoint to getting the scenes back the cast wrote and being like, oh God, okay, this show needs to be really good now. So yeah, thanks. And also, come on. Why are you so good, Cass?
I don't know. Thank you.
No, it's a huge turning point for the show because up until this point, we were still learning about people's backstories and their powers and things like that. And at this point of any other show, they can choose to either introduce a bunch of subplots or 100 more characters, or really dive down into what we have. And, a lot of time in this episode was taken to just really slow down and understand these people in a new situation. And I think that's why it's so powerful and why it, I think it took those first few episodes for us to understand everybody in order for it to be this effective to see them in this situation.
Yeah, because you have to have the foundation of who these people are before you can really dive into like what makes them tick. And which is the part that I don't like. The part A, I like part B better. Like I don't like laying the groundwork. I just want to get into like what's going on in these people's heads. But that's what Scott and Nick are for.
Yeah.
So.
I think the Lorelai stuff is probably the star of the show in this episode. All the Lorelai, Simon, Mindy stuff, I think is all really good. I do really like the Elliot stuff a lot. I think that was the thing that I wrote the most of, was the Elliot stuff. And for me, like the perspective of that was just, we had this character who lost his girlfriend who he was planning on proposing to very soon. And so had this idea of what his future was going to be. And that's a lot of what this show is about, right? It's just like the idea of the future that you think that you're going to have and what the reality of that is. It's sort of a metaphor for being a millennial. And the idea of like, he lost this future and he's sort of been in largely easily in denial because he got superpowers. So he has this other thing to focus on. And then everyone is like, you know what? You should get over this and get out of this hole that you're in and whatever. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. I should like move out of my apartment and this whole thing. And I wanted there to be a moment that caused Elliot to reckon with the fact that he just hasn't really dealt with this Gretchen stuff at all. And what that means and the idea of just sort of like falling back and realizing that like, oh, he's only been in the first step, this whole time, denial. That's it. He's only been in denial and, realizing at least in his mind that Gretchen must be dead now, wrecks this poor guy. And, I don't know. I really liked that. And I think that, again, a lot of it came from, I knew that I wanted to do that when we broke the story, but then you get the scenes back from Cass and it's just like, okay, now it has to be really good. And I just wanted to really nail those things. And we deal a lot more with it in the next episode, but, or the next story. But I really wanted to make sure that I wanted this episode to make the audience understand that we weren't forgetting about Gretchen, and that we have a plan, that there's a plan with Gretchen. And so that's why you get the reveal that like, oh, she was fridged, air quotes, but then at the end it's like, oh no, she wasn't. There's something else going on. And I wanted to make sure that the audience, I wanted to earn their trust, I guess, essentially, with that stuff. And then with all the new stuff, I wish Nick was here to talk about it more. I'll be totally honest. There was a lot of plans with the new stuff. and what those characters would be going through. There's a whole arc. It's teased at the end of this that there was an arc that they were going to go through, and the actress who plays, what is the character's name again?
Veronica.
Yeah, the actress who plays Veronica. In the time before we were going to like start that arc, continuing that arc, she got married and had a kid, and it lost all interest in being creative, really in any way whatsoever. And I, having bad experiences with recasting characters over and over again on the previous show, I'm a little like trigger shy on that sort of thing. So we decided to just sort of cut our losses and be like, well, it's now just Nathan's origin story, and that's it. Don't look any further into it than that, because unfortunately, sometimes these things happen, especially when none of us are professional and life gets in the way. And like I was saying before, sometimes the future that you think you are going to have ends up being what you're going to have,
Right.
and you just kind of have to roll with it. Yeah, it sucks.
It sucks so hard because that was
bad.
one of my favorite characters was Teddy. Like, by far was one of my favorite characters to cast. Like, Teddy and Henry were two of the greatest characters that I got to cast in this season. And, like, they were just, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed.
Yeah, we're still, it's in the back of my head. I want to do something with it. At one point we wrote there was a joke in like one of the old season 2 premieres that would just sort of like wrap up their storyline really quick. And having talked to her about even just coming back for like 2 lines, she wasn't interested. And so it was just like, oh, okay. So we're just like stuck. And so I'm going to try my best to like figure out a way to wrap that up in some way. Especially with Teddy and his relationship with Nathan. I would like to do that in some way. But I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't quite cracked it. And we'll see. I guess you guys will find out if I figure it out when season 2 starts. But anyway, that's Ghost Story. I am really proud of this episode. And Brian's Nathan is just so freaking fun to write.
Oh, so good.
And
So-
listen
it was-
to.
Oh,
It was a
man.
fun one to play too. It was a great character, and it was so well written. And you're right, Nick Jimenez does great Sorkin.
Yeah.
He can just and it's just like bet. And then the people that I'm in those scenes with, like like Chelsi said, Teddy, and just hearing his voice, man. Every time I hear him, I'm just like, damn, that guy's got some good pipes on him. Let me tell you,
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
every
talented.
time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great episode, and it's so much fun, and it's such this episode. It is, besides me having a good character in it too. You're right. It's the episode where we're like, hey, we're on a next level here, and it really is with the writing in it too, and it's such a gut punch. And you're just listening to this, and you're like, this is supposed to be a happy-go-lucky Halloween episode.
Gotcha.
That's
How it starts out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great. It's such a good episode. It really is.
Yeah.
So much fun to work on.
It's especially jarring, re-listening to this episode after starting to revisit the classic show and wanting to like cringe into a ball that I never returned from, but just like cringe away into the ether. It's especially jarring because it's. I'm so proud of this, and I'm proud of the people that I'm working with, and like everyone works so hard to make this show good. And it's honestly like Nick and I are just constantly just trying to do better and earn everyone that works so hard on the show. We don't want to let anyone down, and we never want to release an episode. I mean, we literally, Cass can attest to this. We broke the 3rd episode of season 2. And I went to go do the outline because that's usually the process is we sort of break it in a bare bones way. And then I deeply outline it and then send it to the writers to write based on the outline. And I was like trying to outline it, and I outlined like almost the whole episode. And at a certain point I was just like, no, I hate this. I don't want this. This isn't it. And I literally texted Cass and I was like, hey, can you talk about this? And she was like, I guess. And then we literally just like rebroke the whole episode. Rebroke the whole episode.
That's awesome.
And now it's the episode that you guys will hear in the fall, whenever we get around to actually like airing it. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but it's really good. But like that's the thing, and that's why I get stuck sometimes, is because we go down this rabbit hole of a story that seems like a good idea at the time, but it's not. It doesn't deserve these people. The story that we come up with doesn't deserve these people. And I want every episode to deserve these people, because you guys are amazing and you make the show what it is. And I don't want to give you guys a thing that isn't, deserving of your talent and your hard work. And that's why it takes forever for the show to come out, because I'm a perfectionist, because I think you guys only deserve that. This is the episode that definitely a little bit with the fourth story arc that we talked about last time. Definitely started going down that road, but this was the one that really cemented it and was like, okay, every episode has to be at least as good as this, or I'm doing something horribly wrong. And that's why the show takes forever to come out. Sorry.
Worth the wait. Totally.
Worth the wait.
Anyway,
I think that was a great closing note, and that's all we have time for today. Yeah. But I do want to say thank you very much to all of my guests today: Scott, Chelsi, Nick, Cass, Brian, everybody. And thank you to all of you, the fans, the underdogs, for listening today. If you'd like to support the show, please join the Dueling Genre Patreon at duelinggenre.com/support. You can also tell your friends, families, and followers to subscribe to Geek by Night on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And stay tuned for the next round of episodes, the 4-part release of Identity Crisis. Thanks for going beyond Geek by Night with us. See you next time.